Hi, I'm Alvina Ling.
And I'm Grace Lin.
And we're book friends
forever!
We're childhood friends
who grew up to be
a children's book editor
and an author and illustrator.
Welcome to Book Friends Forever. This is the Award Committees with Susannah Richards episode.
And don't forget to follow us on Instagram and YouTube at bookfriendsforever_podcast.
So as you can tell from our episode title, and also if you're watching on YouTube, we have a special guest joining us, Susannah Richards, Associate Professor of Education at Eastern Connecticut State University, and an all-around children's literature expert, I would say. Hi, Susannah.
Hi, Alvina. Hi, Grace. It's so happy to be here. And it's been nice. Grace, it was nice to see you almost all fall. I feel like we had regular touchstones. And Alvina, you and I often see each other, including last weekend at SCBWI's annual cocktail party and winter conference.
Yeah,
so
that was fun.
I am just delighted to be here.
I know. We've been wanting to have you on for a long time. Do you want to introduce yourself a little bit more for our listeners?
Sure. So I am a literacy and literature professor at Eastern Connecticut, as Alvina said, and I'm kind of a funny person in the children's book industry. A lot of people would say, "What is it you do?" And everybody would say, "We don't know," but she does it. And I have been involved with children's books since about 1989, 1990, when a former marketing director, Bill Morris, heard me speak in an International Reading Association meeting, and then really encouraged me to keep speaking and learning about children's books, and magically started sending me books that I didn't request from HarperCollins at that time. And I have played a lot of different roles in the children's book and literacy world. I have sat on committees like the 2013 Newbery Committee, which awarded the one and only Ivan a Newbery Award.
I just read that for the first time last year, and of course loved it. I don't know why it took me so long.
It was a fun Newbery to be on. We also had 3 honor books. Bomb, The Race to Save and Destroy the World's Most Dangerous Weapon by Steve Schenken, which was a nonfiction book, and Laura Amy Schlitz's Splendor and Glooms, and a fun book about a little Southern detective called 3 Times Lucky as well. So it was a fun year to be on the Newbery. Overwhelming, and it did increase my need for reading glasses. I will say that was really a turning point. I was also in my 40s then, but it was really fun because that book has just led to such a big impact in the children's book industry, with a picture book version and other novels in the series and video productions and all kinds of other things. So that was super, super fun. That was definitely a highlight. I recently just chaired the Boston Globe Horn Book Award, which was the 2025 Boston Globe Horn Book. That's a really different kind of experience because you have 3 committee members. On the Newbery, there are 15 committee members, and you're meeting and reading all year and negotiating until our meeting was in Seattle, which is also complicated because the awards are announced East Coast time. So we had to get up really, really early in Seattle. But the Boston Globe Horn Book is a random committee of 3 people picked by the editor. And where the Newbery is for most distinguished book written for young people up to age 14, the Boston Globe Horn Book is like everything from picture books to poetry, young adult, and you pick 3 books, a winner and 2 honor books in every category, and you live with those for a while. It's also the Newbery and Caldecott and all the other major ALA awards are giving to a book that was published in the previous year by a creator who has a U.S. citizenship or U.S. residency. Let me be clear here. There are lots of different legal options, and the Boston Globe has none of that. I also was lucky to sit on the 2017 Geisel Award, where Lori Keller won for We Are Growing, and we had 4 very different honor books, one by Dave Milgram, one by Greg Pizzoli, and one by Mike Toohey. We had a picture book, Cara LaRue, a series a detective-y series by Carol LaRue, a robot, a robot and an owl and other things like that. And I never really imagined that I would sit on awards committee. It wasn't even really a goal or something that I was focusing on. But once you start a little bit, you kind of get a
You
little
get
bit of
into
a bug.
Yeah. Well,
And
I would love we're going to dive into more. We have lots of questions for you. But as you know, we always start with catching up with each other's lives first.
cool.
So we'll start with Grace. Grace, how have you been?
Oh, oh, it's good. Nice to see you, Susanna. I almost feel like we should just forego all this and just go right into all the Newberry stuff and everything since Susanna's just jumped right in. But so I'll be really brief. It's been really, really snowy here, so trying to
Hmm.
keep warm, we've been kind of holed in, and it's been nice to be holed in. I've been working on making a paper cut design for the Year of the Horse, which I just released in my newsletter. So
Yay.
that's pretty much what I've been up to. How about you, Alvina?
Well, as Susanna mentioned, we saw each other at the SCBWI annual conference in New York City, and so they always have a cocktail party on Friday afternoon, or sorry, evening, which is, I feel like it's one of those events that like everybody in publishing seems to be there, and you see everybody but nobody at the same time. And they have a portfolio review during the party. So that was great. And then I spoke. Pat Cummins had asked me if I would speak to some students. So they always. I did this once before, where they bring in a group of students. I think it's from Pace and Pratt, maybe, or I don't know. I know Pat teaches. Susanna, you would probably know.
It's Pratt.
Pratt. Okay, so I think it's mostly Pratt, but maybe they open it up to other students, and I think they get a discount to the conference, but it's kind of just to talk about what SCBWI is and why it might benefit them to join eventually and go to the conference and meet people and agents. So she always invites an art director, editor, agents, and then illustrators. So Ruth Chan was the illustrator, and she talked about going to her first conference and being really shy and feeling like she didn't meet anyone, and it just kind of like she's like, "What happened?" So she decided to go back again the following year, or maybe 2 years later, and like really, get something. And she ended up winning like second place in the portfolio review contest, and that kind of like set her on her career path. So that was kind of fun to hear. Um, yeah, and then I was on a panel on Saturday. I think it was called The Future of Publishing or something like that. It was basically a publishing panel with, again, art director, two editors, two agents, and I thought it was good. That's
I
a panel.
totally agree. I thought it was really good.
Good. Yay. I always learned a lot. I thought it was, one of the questions that I was a little flummoxed by but I think the questions are really great, but was like, what piece of business advice would you give attendees? And I didn't know how to answer. And then, and Erica Silverman, she said, just like treat your career like a business. Like just remember that you are your own business, which I thought was good advice. I don't know if I gave any advice, but some things to think about. I guess we give a lot of advice on this podcast. Um, anyway, so Susanna, how have you been?
My life's been a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
I like to say last week it was fun to say I woke up in Mumbai on Monday
Oh,
because
yes.
I had just spent 12 days in India from Delhi looking at visiting the Golden Triangle, going to a wedding, and then going to Mumbai and sneaking a little bit of time in to like meet with kids and other things like that, but not nearly as much as I wanted.
Had you
And then
been
I
there
ended up
before?
I'd never been there.
Oh,
I'd been to Asia, but I'd never been to India. And it's definitely been on the back of my bucket list, but like with all good things, it happened like after Thanksgiving. I got invited as a plus one to a wedding. And I was like, I think if I don't go now, I'm going to
yeah.
regret it. So, but it was crazy because I came back and then I like to go to the SCBWI annual conference and they're very generous to me and I like to be helpful and do other things. And so it was really great to be in a room. And I feel like you do about the Friday night event. Like you see everybody, but you see nobody because you can't, it's just like you're just kind of happy and energetic to be there, but you don't necessarily really get to connect with anybody. And it's a new year and there are lots of things going on in the world, but it was super, super fun. I thought the panels were particularly interesting this year and a lot of good things. And you had mentioned Ruth Chan, and Ruth Chan was one of our honor winners for the Boston Globe Horn Book for her memoir, Uprooted, which was published by Roaring Brook, an imprint of Macmillan. And I have to say, it was really nice. Ruth sent me a copy and she said, Susannah, thanks for always making me feel seen and heard. And I guess
Aw.
for me, that's sort of the ultimate in the children's book industry. I want to be behind the scenes. I feel really lucky to have known both of you for literally years and years, and sometimes have had special moments at Grace's home or at memorials and celebrations of life with both of you and other things. And I try to make it to Grace's book launches whenever I can. I'm
I mean,
delighted.
I feel like everyone says like you are magically everywhere.
I do try to really support everyone because I just think that we don't talk enough about the fact that in the industry, even awards are about curating. And with over 7,500 books published every year, it's like we know that all those books don't get the same amount of attention, and not every book gets an award or on the New York Times bestseller list or a starred review or even just like picked up on a podcast like your podcast and other things. And I wouldn't say 100% of the books are worthy of having attention because that would just be inaccurate. But I do think there's a much wider range of books that you can connect. And I like to say it's like the right book for the right person at the right moment under the right circumstances.
Yeah.
And that may not be a book that's for you, but it might be for something else. Tiffany Jackson was just at this SCBWI conference, and it was so interesting to listen to her talk about her evolution as a children's book writer. And I believe, and she has a new picture book out
Oh, wow.
too, and thinking about that. But I do think of awards really as this curation, and it is something I will admit I take really seriously. Um, Sometimes it makes me want to cry because, like, you get down to that final decision and you're like, but I really, really want, like, you become
Yeah.
attached and other things. But I do think the children's book industry is like so much a part of who we are as a society and what
Mm.
we can be.
Hmm.
And I hope that awards on Monday, as for anybody who the awards are going to be announced at 10 a.m. Central Time, which is late actually, in Chicago on Monday. What is that? January 26th.
Right.
And
And
it's the
I should say that this actually episode, we're recording this on the 22nd. So we're recording this before the awards are announced, but it actually won't air until after the awards are
after.
announced.
So, but people will be able to watch them on
Yep.
like this,
Yeah.
in post-production. So it's
If
kind
we're
of
not stuck in the snowstorm, we'll be.
yeah, well, I'm a little worried about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it'll be really interesting. And for those people who watch this and then go to watch the awards, this will be the first time the awards has done really not in the big way that it's been done in the past,
Hmm.
where a lot of people have been there and a lot of publishers. I'm not even
Can
clear
you
how many
talk about that a
publishers
little bit more? So I think so ALA Midwinter
died,
died
basically.
was last year.
Last year was something called LibLearn X, and
Oh,
it was
right.
sort of a subset. It was supposed to be a learning ALA,
So is
and
this the first year that it's nothing?
sort of, yeah. And anybody can go to the awards ceremony, but in the past, and Alvina, you've been there or whatever, and
You mean the
like
announcements or
yeah,
this?
the
Okay.
announcements.
Yep. Hmm.
In the past, what would happen is it was part of a big, big conference and a small subset of people, but as many as like hundreds, maybe up to 1,000, would gather
Hmm.
about an hour before the press conference outside a door, waiting for it to open up.
Yep.
And then the committees would each be brought in to sit in the front of the room. and then members of the American Library Association, the American Library uh, Association Service to Children, and the Young Adult Library Service Association, also known as ALSC and YALSA, would the presidents of those and would get up and announce the winners that had been kept secret
Yeah.
for approximately 24 hours. But to be fair, a lot of that changed during COVID when the timeline for committee decisions changed. And so sometimes the secret is kept for a couple of weeks now, depending on which committee it is. This is where the ALA YMAs, which stands for Youth Media Awards, are announced. And it is not only the well-known Newbery Caldecott, but it's also the
Greta Scott
the
King.
Greta Scott King, the Pura Belpré, the Stonewall Award, the Schneider Award, the Odyssey Award, the Mildred Batchelder. I'm going to
Yeah.
stop there. Just
Legacy.
so Legacy, Apollo, and other things
Yeah.
like that. And it's a kind of curation
Yeah.
because those committees range from 3-person, which is a small size committee for something like the Legacy, to a 15-person committee. You'll notice that those are all the numbers are odd numbers, which is to make things a little bit mathematically easier
That makes sense.
in the decision making.
I never thought about that.
And in the case of the Newbery and the Caldecott, the committee chairs are appointed, and then 7 people are elected by the constituency, and 7 people are appointed to flush out the committee, maybe to add a professor or somebody from a different region, or a younger librarian, or a person who has a really strong background in literacy or other things like that. So that's super fun.
Do you think the loss of the ALA Midwinter Conference affects, how does that affect things?
I don't know yet. And
Okay.
that's one of the reasons that my goal, preventing snow, if snow doesn't get it, is to be there to see what the difference is. When I first started going to that announcement, there were pay phones outside the room. There were no cell phones, and there were people who were shocked in the room when their book or a book that they had published won, and they were literally running to payphones to tell their publishers. And over the years, it's gotten a little more, technological and communication savvy. But I don't know. It also was that in the older, like I sound like an old fogey. A long time ago, the next day, the press, the New York Times, the early morning news programs. I think maybe it was the Today Show. I'm a little tired.
I think it was the Today Show, yeah.
The Today Show would literally fly the Newbery and the Caldecott winner, and they would be on the next day. But my memory is that about 10 or 12 years ago, they got bumped for some entertainer. Wasn't it an entertainer or something?
They got bumped for Snooki.
Oh, yeah, okay. They
Really?
got bumped for Snooki. And that kind of tradition stopped.
Which is really sad.
And so I do worry that the general public won't get the information. And while I don't think that those are the only books that we should give accolades by any means, I do think it's a little bit of a time to celebrate all the hard work of authors and illustrators and art directors and publishers and editors and agents and this team of people that come together in order to produce this absolutely fabulous book. And this book that has been recognized. But the truth of the matter is getting recognized is not just about talent, it's a little bit about luck.
Oh,
and
I think it's a lot.
I think a lot
situation.
about luck, honestly.
It's about situation, like who is on the committee who has the ability to articulate his, her, or their position. And, you don't give away what happened. Like you're not supposed to say, well, your book would have won if such and such. But
that's heartbreaking to hear.
Word gets out or other things. But I'm not going to lie to you, and I'm just going to use an older new Caldecott Award winner as an example. When Mordecai Gernstein won the Caldecott for The Man Who Walked Between the Towers, the late great Mordecai Gernstein, that was a book about Philip Petit and the Twin Towers. That book, had it been published in 1999 and eligible for the 2000 Caldecott, I really strongly believe, in my professional opinion, there's no way it would have won the Caldecott.
Hmm.
But having been published in a relatively short amount of time, a couple of years actually, after the towers fell, and with its meticulous and fabulous illustrations and one error, because it originally said, I think that it was 7/12, the size of the rope, which Mordecai had corrected in the second printing.
Ooh.
It was like 5/12 of an inch. I'm like, I don't care. I wouldn't have been up there no matter what anyway. Um, had that book been published at another time, I do not personally believe it would have risen to the top
Hmm.
of the 15 member committee, which does not mean I'm in any way, shape, or saying that it wasn't like distinguished. I'm just saying that it's a lot of variables. When I was on the Newbery, I I received almost like 750 books just for that alone.
Yeah.
And I read a lot of all of them, but I didn't read all of them because it's physically impossible because you're doing these award committees as a volunteer on the National Book Award Committee or the Boston Globe Horn Book or the Newbery or the Caldecott or the Massachusetts State Award or the Bluebonnet in Texas. It's a volunteer opportunity. And one of the things we're finding now is it's getting harder and harder to find people who will commit to doing the reading and the due diligence.
Mm.
And so that also impacts committee members.
Can you talk? I know, Victoria Stapleton, our Stone
Yes.
Library marketing director. She's kind
A
of told us,
she's like a powerful,
yes,
source
she's
in the children's book
amazing.
industry.
And she's told us a little bit about how the voting works and nominating. But what I think it'd be interesting to if you could share the process of the new. Let's talk about the
That is
Newbery.
public. Like that
Yes.
is like public and other things. So I'm going to talk first about, I guess, the Newbery because people are most,
Yeah.
interested in that. So in the Newbery, any publisher can nominate any book he, she, or they choose. Okay, and they do that. The list of the addresses of the committee are made public, and they send those books. But any committee member can also do their own due diligence and find a book. And there are instances, many actually, of books having won because somebody found it and made a case for it. And then it might have been requested or people went out of their way to find it, So anybody can nominate a book. There's also a public forum for nominating. So it usually comes out on a blog post or an email blast from the ALA and that said anybody who wants to nominate a book, you can do so. The one slight exception for that, I believe still now, is for self-published books, they have to go directly to the committee chair. They're not supposed to send to everybody. They kind of have to get vetted a little bit, and other things. So then the 15 members of the committee read those books. And in the beginning, I'm going to call it random reading. It's literally random reading because you don't know. And then at a certain point in the process, depending on the committee chair, who's the orchestrator of this, you are then asked to narrow down and maybe every month highlight your top 3. And so then as you get towards closer in the committee, everybody's put their top 3. And sometimes there's overlap in that. And sometimes it's like, you've never even seen this book that somebody else nominated. And then you have an obligation to read that book that anybody has nominated. Find it, read it, get it, do whatever you have to. In the older days, it had to be in print form. It had to be in like print format. They've loosened up and you can now read an e-copy. And then every month you just nominate, or they're called suggestions usually. You put those suggestions. And then as you get closer and closer, those suggestions are narrowed down. And so I'm just hypothetically going to say maybe you have like 20 to 40 books on your plate when you get ready for midwinter or those last few meetings that you're going to have. And you first see if you can like get it down to a reasonable number, let's say 20, 15. And then you start voting and articulating. I'm not going to say arguing, but pleading your case over and over again until you reach a clear, obvious medal winner. And there has to be what's called a spread, I believe, between the winner and the honor books. So they can't be like 1 point in vote apart. and each vote, a a like a your number one vote has a certain amount of points, and then your number two and number three, and then there's a thing. It works a little bit differently for the smaller committees, but that's sort of the gist of it, that there has to be a clear winner. It can't be like all these books were clustered together.
Hmm.
And in that process, you're negotiating a lot. You're giving up on things you love, um, that nobody is ever really going to know that you loved or how close they got. And sometimes it's hard because you're like, this book
Yeah.
was, I want everybody to know this book. And I thought this was a chance for everybody to know this book. And so you're doing that and you're voting and voting and voting. And in the old days, um, a lot of people don't realize this, but when Newbery and Caldecott first started, it was the same committee who picked both of them. And
Oh,
then they separated, and then the timeline for them changed. And then, like in my day, and I'm still eligible again. I mean, it's very likely that I will. I got asked for some things last year, but I was chairing Boston Globe Horn Books, so there's just like there's only so much you can do. And in the old days, you would literally have to be done about 36 hours before the announcements. And then there would be the double checking and the writing of the press release, which you do in part behind the scenes on your committee. And then you would keep a secret. And a true story for me was, which I still can't believe, but she says the editor of the one and only Ivan and I had already set up a meeting for Sunday afternoon. And he and we'd already set up a meeting for Sunday afternoon at ALA in Seattle to catch up and other things. And we're sitting on the floor in the convention hall. And all I'm doing is thinking, I can't smile. I can't give anything away. And we kept talking. I kept thinking, oh my gosh, how long is this going to go on? I love talking to her. I was super, super excited, but I was like, I never have like been so in turmoil over having to keep a secret, you know, and I'm
hmm.
sitting there with her and you can't say anything. It's just wrong to say anything whatsoever. Um, and to this day, she and other people say that like she was just flabbergasted when she heard. And I was sitting on the aisle as the committee members, the Newbery gets the front row. And so I was on the aisle front center seat. And there were a lot of people who are really excited. John Chu, who of course is now an author himself, and the editor in HarperCollins, and Catherine Applegate and other things. But you're just like, and you just hope it works out
Yeah.
because not every, like as Grace mentioned earlier, I think with Aaron and Trotta Kelly, um, not every book that wins even makes it to the New York Times bestseller list. Or for a long time, Mordecai Gerdstein's Caldecott never made it out of second printing.
Oh, wow.
And there are a lot of other books that like literally, and then there are other books that when they win, they're already in multiple printings
Yeah.
because this isn't a popularity contest, people.
So
It's
I just want
about
to, because I
quality.
think because you referenced Aaron and Trotta Kelly, and that part of our conversation was not recorded, so I
Oh,
feel like I
sorry.
need to put that in
Oh, yeah,
context
sorry.
for listeners. So before we got on, and we are going to just before we got on, I mentioned reading an article in I think it was PW that said that they were wondering if the awards had lost its effect, or
The
because its
sales
sales effects,
impact.
because they were in the article, it was saying Aaron and Trotta Kelly's um, book had won the Newbery, and in the past those books that had won the Newbery usually were on the New York Times bestseller list directly after, and hers was not. And so that's, I just wanted to clear that up. I didn't
And
want
I
people
think
to
Yeah,
think I
because
that
was
that was
like
was, I think
upsetting.
that was last year too for First State of
Yeah,
Being, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so it's a weird thing. Also, when Chooch won, the
Chooch. Yep.
Chooch
Chooch
helped.
helped.
This is a book by Andrea L. Rogers, illustrated. Remember, the Caldecott is given for the illustrator, Rebecca Lee Kuntz, and published by Levine Querido, and distributed by Chronicle. When it won, they didn't have enough copies, like
Yeah.
literally. So it couldn't even make it onto you couldn't change the sales because there weren't enough copies in existence. And that is something that publishers think about. In the old days when ALA would happen, as soon as the awards were announced, every publisher put out their copies of books that had won. But the truth would be that there would always be times where a book might have won an award and they didn't even have it in their booth because it wasn't on their radar, or maybe the copies didn't arrive. Um, you know, and it isn't a fault of anyone's. I just want to be clear. We're not casting blame on any of this. It's a circumstantial event. And you just don't know. You don't know. But if a publisher doesn't have the books available in the warehouse, if they can't fast track it, and with paper shortages and like all the things about a business, because
Yeah.
publishing is a business, there are lots of things. There was a period of time where Alvina, is at Little Brown, and Grace publishes significantly with Little Brown, where Little Brown like took the call to cut 3 years in a row, right? Javaka, Dan, and Sophie, like literally 3 years in a row. You were like they thought something might happen, and so they're ready. But a lot of times, if it's a smaller publisher, if there's been something happening in the world, there are lots of legitimate reasons
Yeah.
stuff
Well,
doesn't.
it's hard. Well, so first of all, like Victoria, who I've mentioned before, she's very superstitious. So she doesn't want to even speak aloud her hopes, right? But she has to certain people because if we do feel like a book has a chance, especially Caldecott, because picture books generally print overseas and usually in China, and that's why it like takes. I mean, normally it would take like 4 months to get books printed and then shipped. So we prepare to print domestically, which is much more expensive, but we feel like it's, of course, more important to have copies if something does win. So, she does have to kind of prepare production to like, okay, let's make sure that there are files at a domestic printer and we could like press print right away if we need to. And I don't think, I think back in the day we didn't do that, and
Yeah, I
everyone would
mean,
be flat-footed.
I will admit, like, there have been years where I spend well, a long time ago, I used to have my job was actually to call independent booksellers and see who had copies of the book to see how readily available they were.
Mm,
And then that's evolved over time because of technology and other things. But there literally are also times where a book wins, and for the next 24 hours, I'm in panic because I don't have a copy. For the last 30 years, I have first edition, first printings, pre-sticker. Like all of mine are like pre-sticker copies of books. I mean, and sometimes I'm really excited, like when Grace won a Newbery honor or a Caldecott honor. I not only had those books pre-sticker, I had first printings, I had signed copies. I had one signed to me and one not signed to me, because who wants that many books signed to me? And that's really exciting. And in 2023, it was just like a great year for me. Somebody had said to me what was going to win the night before, and I don't, but in 3 or 4 of the categories, I hit it like exactly. And my friend Michael Emberley got a Geisel for I Did It, that I'd sat with him in coffee shops while he had done it, and Doug Salati won for Hot Dog, and a bunch of agents asked me the night before, like, what would be my outlier that I would want to win? And I said, Doug Salati's Hot Dog. I think it's just a really distinguishedly illustrated book. But then there are other years I'm like, oh my God, who published that? What was
yeah.
that? You know?
So I know our listeners will already know what has won. They live in the
Yeah,
future and we don't know.
wait out.
I don't know. Do you feel comfortable maybe saying some of your favorite books from this year that you hope?
I mean, it's like so all over the place. I
Yeah.
do love this Katja Chen fireworks book.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think
I
it's
I'm
stunning.
hoping for that.
Yeah,
Crossing my fingers for you, Katya.
I think it's just a stunning book in every way.
Yeah.
I
And
think
it's
it's
so hard to
exceptional.
illustrate fireworks.
Yeah, and it's like with the vibrant colors. I don't know if that's
Yeah.
like a fuchsia or a pink. I just really kind of love that. I will admit, I love the winner of the Dollhouse, this Laura Amy Schlitz book. I have no idea for the Newbery what's going to win because it's all over. Maybe
Yeah.
there's a Derek Barnes book that I really like.
I know a
There are
lot of people
lots.
like Kate Messner's book.
Kate Messner's book, I
That
think
one
has
we
a
do a
possibility.
mock Newbery and a mock Caldecott, and the Kate Messner won our mock Newbery.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I think Kate is an
Trouble with
exceptional writer.
Heroes.
The Trouble with
Yeah.
Heroes. I think that's an exceptional book. I think there Nicholas Day's this fight the
I love Nicholas
book
Day. I haven't
for
read
I
that one
think
though.
he's amazing for nonfiction. I was also this won the Boston Globe Horn book in the nonfiction category. Death in the
Oh
Jungle.
yeah.
I don't I just think that Candace Fleming does an amazing job of breathing in context and other things. Um there are there are just a bunch of things that I think are up there, and I think it's just like who knows?
Yeah.
The committees have some younger people on them. They have some really well-read people. They're always going to be somebody, I like to say that I have 45,000 children's books and I've read most or all of them. And sadly, that's true. If you even saw where I was sitting right now, I definitely believe that. So it really depends. And it's fun. Like I'll use Grace's book and Kate Messner's book, Once Upon a Book to like think about like the book decisions and like um what you have. But I do think it could be all over. I'm a little
Once Upon a Book
lost.
didn't win anything though.
No, 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 no. But I use it as I use it as kind of an idea, like what is your once upon a book? Like what is the thing what is the book that resonates with you?
I'm sure it was a contender.
You know,
Might have
I
been a
mean,
contender.
I do think, but I don't even remember what the exact pub date was this, and it could have even been because the Boston Globe Horn book spans half a year. I will admit I got lost a little bit in what came out in 2025 and 24, but this actually came out in 2025, Song of a Blackbird. Um, so maybe
That's
I don't,
beautiful. I've never heard of it.
yeah, it is just it's a
Yeah.
graphic novel and it has
Oh, okay.
French flaps.
Ooh.
Alvina's been helping me
What's a
over.
French flap?
Well, French flap is when a paperback like
Yeah.
has the flap like
Ah.
this.
Yeah.
Alvina's been helping me on my book terms, like making me sure that I knew what spreads were because Grace's latest novel was just like one of the most beautiful things ever.
Oh.
Yeah.
And the spreads. So, I don't know. It
I
could go
know.
all over the
Well,
place. And
I don't have the results for our mock Caldecott yet, but based on we had it yesterday, so people voted and I haven't seen the results. But based on the discussion, I feel like the top choices were Catnap by Brian
Yep.
Lees,
Yep.
Fireworks, illustrated by Katya Chen, and
Written by Matthew Burgess.
yes, and then Every Monday Mabel
Oh my God. Now I have to
by
say
Jashar Awan.
Juan, I love this book about Mabel waiting for the garbage collector every Monday.
Yep.
I'm quite a big fan of it. And those three books, the illustration style of those three books is very
Oh wait,
dynamically
I
different.
should sorry, and I forgot. Like probably the one that most people loved was Broken by
Oh,
X Fang.
yeah,
Yeah.
Oh,
which is
great.
also which is a fabulous also, and that storytelling in that like and
Oh, so
Broken.
good.
I have to say
There's so many great
I'd be
picture
happy
books
with
this year.
any of those four of
Yeah,
those.
me
And
too.
if it was like a medal winner and an honor, I'd also feel secure and sleep well at night because I featured all of
Yeah.
those books.
Um,
But I do think, it can often come down to a very quick decision of the like all this stuff floating and in your brain. And I like to say it's also a little bit about intuition and gut, right? Because you have to think about it and then you have to articulate. And at a certain point, you sometimes literally your brain is spinning, but you run out of things. Like I
Yeah.
can't say anything more like about this. It's vibrant colors, it's placement, it's book, you get into book production.
Is it true that you can't repeat, like in the different rounds, that you're not allowed to repeat something that you brought up in an earlier round? I think that's something Victoria had said that
Yeah,
she.
it depends sort
Yeah.
of on like the interpretation.
Mm.
First, the word distinguished has a wide interpretation. For Boston Globe Horn book, it's not even distinguished, it's exceptional and there are no rules. There literally is no handbook.
Yeah.
And so but you can't keep saying over and over again because it
Like,
doesn't
it's
help
beautiful.
you.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And the kinds of things I could say as a reviewer in front of an audience, I have to be much more articulate
Mhm.
and I need to know the use of gouache was instrumental in this artist's ability to present this color,
Hmm.
right? So Cachetin could not have gotten those vibrant colors with every medium,
Yeah.
right?
I think
And
that's where like having the illustrator or the author at ALA or other event talking about their process actually does potentially
there's no
affect
question about it.
how committee members can articulate like what works or doesn't work about a book. So
Even
I
if they're on a podcast or they
hmm
wrote about it or they did is it 5 questions with Roger,
hmm
something in the trade,
yeah.
because as a committee member, if you're doing your due diligence, you're re you want to come up with your own opinion,
hmm
but you may not know like gouache, acrylic,
yeah.
like oil. You might not know how that works as well as you need to, and you may need to like talk about the layered systems. And now with so many people doing digital art or doing partial digital art,
Yep.
using Procreate or Still Illustrator or Photoshop, it matters. It
hmm
matters. And then you look at something like, let's just take Brian Lees's Catnap book, which is like
Oh my gosh.
literally a
Unbelievable.
world, like literally an artistic world within 30. I haven't even counted it. I don't know if it's 32, 40, or 48 pages, so I'm not going to lie. But you just look at the literally the range of what he was able to do in those images. And if anyone at any time is ever lucky enough to see him when he brings some of his originals, or any artist when they bring their originals, you just like look at these and you're like, how many different artistic techniques
Yeah.
did you explore in
I
order to
know.
create this book?
It's yeah, I it's incredible.
Yeah.
I think it's
Well,
incredible too, though I do think it's an interesting, I think about this quite often in terms of what we value in terms of, and I don't want people to think that this is a slam on Catnap or on Brian Lees. I think he's an amazing person, but I just think, and his art's amazing. And this is more of a general thinking about what we value as talent and as what is great. Like we tend to value people who are very versatile, right? Like I think about like when we say like Edward Norton is an amazing actor. He's so talented because he can play all these different characters over, like all these different like, and that's how we think of somebody as uber talented. Yet is somebody who can do one thing super well and amazing that in a way that nobody else can do, is that just as talented? I always think about that,
hmm,
like is our how we value someone's like say, let's say Katya, she can do what she does and no one else can do it, right? But could she probably could, but let's just say, but can she do a Renaissance painting? Let's say she can't. Like, though I bet you she probably could, but let's say she can't do Renaissance painting style. Does that mean that she's like, how do we value that? And like, that's just something that
I
I
think
think
that's a
about
really
often.
interesting thing. It's funny. People often ask how I got to be who I am, and I don't think anybody could replicate it. Maybe I'm wrong or whatever. But
no, you are one of a kind.
I have a PhD in ed psych. And one of those areas, it's like highly talented people, creativity, and other things like that. And interestingly enough, next week I'm going to be giving a lecture looking at creativity and talent development. And what Grace said is just so really important to me in a lot of ways, that talent can be like really perfecting something really, really well. And it can also be diversification and generalization. And we, at least in this society, don't necessarily value that specific. And having just spent this 10 days or so in India, where where people are perfecting a mosaic for their entire life, or carpet making, or art,
Hmm.
or any kind of art, or stonework, or other things. And literally the attention and the quality of what they're making, we don't even appreciate to the level that we should.
Yeah.
The hundreds of hours, we go back to that 100-hour rule, like to get good at something you put in a, and I think Grace makes a really good point that
Yeah.
what is distinguished, like there isn't a definition for what is distinguished, but it is a match. It is a match between what the story says and the images and how they add value to it, or or what the story was supposed to be. I know, um, like one of my favorite writers, just for fun, that I would have loved as a kid, who I'm lucky to know, and I think Grace might even be in a book writing group with, is Jonathan Auxier. Jonathan Auxier encapsulates like a writing ability that I will never have, but I appreciate so incredibly well. And whether it's Peter Nimble or Sophie Squire or some of the world that he created, um, that is an exceptional talent to me. Or
Hmm.
I'm like, at the end of the week or when I get a breathing moment, I can't wait to read Kate Milford's new book, or
Yeah.
who also I think writes like is the kind of writer that I would have loved when I was 12, but I still love at 61. I think that really we have to think more about what is talent
Yeah.
development
I
and
feel
what
like this
is
could be a
done
whole
well.
other
Yeah,
I
like
know.
podcast
what is
episode.
done, like what is done well, because this was a Caldecott honor a few years ago. This is Juana Martinez Neal's Alma and How She Got Her Name. Everything about this book feels right to me, right?
Hmm.
Everything, like the images, the story, the pacing, the
The design,
typography, the
yeah.
design, the it's not quite square trim size, but it's more square. um you know um Everything about it, it's just like the instinct is, wow, I just love that book. I really, I love it. I love sharing it. The irony of all of these awards, with the exception of the state awards, is none of them take into account what kids think.
That was actually going to be my question was, because the criteria is that it has to be a book for children, but it doesn't say anything about child appeal. So does that, and in your experience, I don't know if you're allowed to talk about that, but like, is that brought up in the room
Yeah,
in the
I think
discussion?
it is brought up.
Hmm.
And there's, for lack of a better term, and to try not to get everybody mad at me, there's a different level of due diligence about that, right? So some people are working with kids or have kids in their lives. Some people are talking just in general about books and picking them up. And that child appeal is a really interesting thing, because also as adults, we often impose what we think is child appeal.
Hmm.
Um, and then and sometimes we're right, like for some people, but then you watch this one kid who just flips about everything, and it's the book they take to bed with a flashlight.
Hmm.
They're absolutely obsessed. I have this little boy in Cami in my life, and he's both a research subject and a friend and everything else like that. And he's what we call a highly able reader. He was reading Percy Jackson at 5 with Pretty High. He once asked me how a Bible could have so many words, and we had to talk about the parchment paper and the vellum and whatever. He just like really, and the books that appeal to him are just great story. Like it could be about anything. He's a big Grace Lin fan. He loved Trent and Lee Stewart, The Mysterious Benedict Society. This was all before he was 7 years old, like
Wow.
literally
Yeah.
7 years old. And so I just think we can't impose, but I also think
Yeah, I agree.
there are books that have won in the past that I appreciate and love, but haven't stood the test. Like not all major
Yeah.
winners get known forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And
there's just,
sometimes it's the honor books that get known
yeah,
forever, like Charlotte's Web, for
like
example. Yeah.
Charlotte's Web, or exactly like that. And people are often floored
And
that
Where
the
the Mountain
books
Meets
they
the Moon.
grew up with, yeah, or they're floored that the books that they grow up with where they love were not medal winners,
Hmm.
but they were books that they love,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think about that too because, we talk about distinguished, and I think a while ago there was that like picture book manifesto that was like what
Well, yeah.
some artists thought were what made good picture books. And it was around that time when I had Hazel was like picture book age. And that's when like I would take out like this is where the wild things are. She's like, "No," and she'd like throw it under the bed. And it was like such a humbling thing for me as an author and illustrator of picture books, to realize like all the things that we think about that are in this manifesto, she did not care about. Like they were like did not make one difference to her. And she's like, I want My Little Pony book, like I want this book. Like it was, and to me, it was a really big deal. Becoming a parent was super humbling, and it really made me realize, oh, everything I've been taught about what makes a distinguished book doesn't really matter to the child. What matters to them, as to me, slowly I started realizing what makes a good book is just if a child loves it, and like that's really what it started to
Yeah.
come down to, and that's what made these awards. I don't get me wrong, I am so honored about all these awards, and I think they're amazing, and I think they're important for our industry because it shows how our work is an art form and we can keep pushing the boundaries and all of those things. But in the end, I'm always like, well, really, what makes a good book is just if a kid loves it.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. One of the books that we gave a Boston Globe Horn Book honor to was this book, Nose to Nose, this picture book. And
Oh,
this is a book about dogs and peeing and communication and friendship and feeling kind of alone and then misunderstood. Man, you know, this is not this is not a story that I would have envisioned 5, 10. In fact, till the day I read it, I would have never conceptualized this book. But I literally, if I've read it on the subway, I've read it on the subway and had parents who didn't even know who I was, listen and brought it into schools and other things, and kids just love it. Absolutely love the images. They love the story and the pacing. And I think that's a really good point. You're going to love what you're going to love. And this is why I talk to parents a lot and I'll say, look, your kid is reading, be happy.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yes, you may have read as an adult something that you don't think is literary, like you may have read a romance or a mystery or whatever. I mean, honestly, reading
Yeah.
every Agatha Christie is not really, or what Louis L'Amour or whatever it is, or Colleen Hoover. I hesitate to even say that, but most of you have been able to get up, brush your teeth, get through your day, another thing. But if you have a kid who is reading and loves those books, just be happy about it.
Yeah.
Oh,
And I think it's really exciting, but it is an interesting thing. Like Grace, you're really an exception in the industry in a lot of ways. Because am I not right? Like you have had such a wide variety of medals. Like for somebody to have a Caldecott honor and a Newbery honor and a didn't Ling and I'm so
Geisel
tired.
honor. Yep.
Got
Hmm.
Geisel honor as well as
Legacy
state
medal.
award, a legacy medal. I mean, you are the EGOT like of our industry because you are,
Yeah. National Book
you
Award finalist.
National Book Award finalist. You are GOAT, like the, you know, um, and like that is really, really the exception and not the rule. Because most writers can't illustrate, and not all illustrators can write and write for different audiences. But when you think about your entire career since Ugly Vegetables, which I think was either like one of your early books, if
First
It's the
not
one, yeah.
first. Yeah.
your first book. I mean, just looking. By the way, I also have to just gonna say a plug for anybody who watches or listen to this. If you are a book creator and you are on a podcast, do what Grace does. Have your books in the background so that people can see them,
Yes.
so that
I
they make
usually
that
do. I am in
connection.
a blank
Yeah. No, but I
conference
think
room today.
that's so important. And the
Yeah.
truth is, awards is about curating. It is about luck. It is about quality. It is also, let's not forget the business side of it. It's about a publisher getting those books in the hands of the committee members.
Yeah.
And I'm on deadline for something later this week or early next week. And I'm not going to lie, the books I'm going to write about are books that I have easy access to,
Hmm.
even though there's one book I might go out and look for because I just would really like to put it on people's radar. But if I have to go to 3 bookstores to find the book, that's time that I'm supposed to be writing or teaching or preparing for events like this. And so if you have people who are like the industry used to call big mouths, like I still refer to myself,
Yep.
then
You
you
are.
want them to have access
Hmm.
to the books because that means that I can stew over it off and on. And I look at it and I think about it. And really, for me, it's about a book that resonates, that I still want to talk about or share with a different audience at a different time.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's so, like, for me, so dynamic about the children's book industry and
Yeah.
the quality of amazing people that recognize that everyone, quoting our great Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop, that everyone has a right to windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors. And like looking at the work that Grace had done with like parent looking at your child's bookshelf, how are you providing opportunities for kids to hear Indigenous stories or Black stories or Pacific Islander? Everybody's story counts. Every story isn't always going to get told. There's a difference. And
Yeah, and
every
I think
story doesn't make for a really good um, picture book. I sat in Grace or Kate Messner's talk at SCBWI, and she was talking about like what makes a good picture book biography. And I agree with a lot of what she said, but then there's the school audience versus the parent audience. Grace, you had something.
no, I just want to piggyback about what you were saying about how about so many stories, and I was thinking about what you said about Mordecai Gernstein's book, right? About how you thought maybe if he hadn't been published that year, it might not have won the Caldecott, but it was still a distinguished book, like
Yeah.
and it was definitely deserving of the award. So it's not that it wasn't deserving; it's just that maybe if it wasn't that year, he wouldn't have won. And I think that's I kind of want to flip that to all the authors and illustrators who are listening. Like there are so many distinguished books that don't get the award. And just
Yes.
because you don't get the award does not mean your book is not distinguished. It just means that was the roll of the dice that
Yep.
year.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the lesson of Mordecai's book. His book was still super distinguished. It was just good timing. And
Mm-hmm.
and so
Yeah.
maybe you've made a distinguished book, but it's just not good timing for you. And you just got to keep
I think
making
that's
more
it.
books.
I know that a lot of these mocks, so we're well into mock, like we have public mocks and other things. And I know there have been instances where somebody goes into the weekend waiting for the call. Don't wait for the
No.
call.
Yeah.
You
Don't wait for
can't
the call.
don't
You can't
I mean
expect
I,
it.
I mean that with
Although
all
pick up
due
the call
respect.
if you do get called.
Yeah, absolutely pick it up. And if it's a number you don't recognize, listen to the voicemail and call back following the directions, because there are all kinds of stories about that stuff. But don't wait for the call. Do the work because you love it. Do the work because it feeds you. Be happy about that kid who loves that story.
Yeah.
Be happy about that random moment where somebody sends you, or social media, you see a picture of somebody loving your book, because that is fabulous. I
Yeah.
mean, it's the greatest thing. And
That's
also,
why we do it.
don't
Yeah.
feel like, please, everybody, never feel like you deserve it or your
No.
time has come,
Yeah.
So
because
I
that is
also
a
want to
recipe for
express
disaster.
I understand the desire. Like
Of
don't
course, the
yeah, and I
want.
understand the wanting, the yearning. We all understand the
Yes.
yearning.
Well, I think that's a good place to end, even though I honestly feel like we do need a part two. Maybe next year, maybe we'll have you back every year.
I'd love that. I'd love
Because I
that. I
think
feel
there's
like
so
there's
many
so
more
many things
stories and questions
Yeah.
and
and
things.
other things like that. And I
Yes.
also I am trying to be better about my social media presence. So if anybody wants to follow me at Sussing Out Books, I am Sussing Out Books.
Yes. Well, we're not done
Um,
with the podcast yet, but
yeah,
I think
so
we'll close the committee discussion, and we'll move on to our fortune cookie segment.
ooh.
So for our fortune cookie segment this week, because I think we could all use a little more hope and joy in our lives, I thought we could all share something that's bringing us hope and or joy right now. Grace, do you want to start? What's bringing you hope and or joy?
Sure. Before I talk about hope and joy, last week we talked a little bit about feeling kind of guilty about not talking about current events on social media. And I still feel that way, even during this podcast. Like I always feel like, oh gosh, are we sounding tone deaf or anything like that? And I just want to put in another, I guess, caveat that we know that there's a lot of things that are on fire right now, and I'm hope, and we are sending our best, and I'm making my calls again. So maybe that's something that's bringing me joy, is that I don't know if it's bringing me joy, but it's bringing me hope that I'm making my calls um to my senators and my representatives again. Though I don't know, a bit. So that's giving me a little bit of hope. The thing that's kind of bringing me joy, though, which is really, really funny, because I go on social media and there's two things on my social media that has taken over. One is all the mess of the world, which makes me feel really sad. And the other thing is this TV show, or the is unheated is heated rivalry.
Yes. The hockey
the
romance.
the gay hockey TV show. I guess it's like it is all over my feed, and there's all these like 30-second 1 minute clips, and they're all over, and I feel like I've watched the entire show in 30-second 1 minute clips, right? And like it's really funny because I feel like I know so much about it and I've never watched the show. And I'm like, should I get the book? Should I read these books? And but it is actually bringing me kind of a lot of joy because it's really, I feel like really funny, like knowing so much about it. Like my daughter comes home and she's just like, people are talking about this like hockey show, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's about. And I told her about it, and she's like, how do you know?
I don't think it would be appropriate for Hazel.
Yeah. So I was like, there's a lot of sex scenes in it, so I don't know if we should watch it. She's like, because she was like, can we watch it? And I was like, well, we can watch some 1 minute clips that I have on my phone.
Oh my gosh, that's so
Oh my
funny.
God, I'm gonna have to check this out. I don't know anything about this.
Yes,
It's like,
it's called Heated Rivalry.
oh my gosh.
It's based on a book.
Yeah, I mean, because like I said, I
Of the
haven't.
same name? Is the book
Yeah.
of the same name?
Yeah. And
Oh.
speaking of how you were saying how there's books, like, I guess it's kind of a smash hit that was under the radar. Like, and like, so for a long time, this show came out, it became huge, and people couldn't get the books, and they just kind of finally got the books back in or something like that. But anyway, so I think it's really funny, and and it's bringing me kind of joy.
You know, it's
that way.
interesting.
So,
Sorry, I just decided to look it up. So so the series is called Game Changer, but Heated Rivalry is the title of book 2. So I wonder if the Netflix they like the title, which I agree. Heated Rivalry is a much better title than
It
Game
is a good
Changer.
title.
So, but it's on HBO Max, is
Yes.
the show, which I have
and
not
I think
seen.
and I'm pretty sure when I look through all the clips I get, there's some really, really steamy ones, which I would not show my daughter, but there's other ones that are like sweeter. The one I really like is where like I guess the gay hockey player calls his boyfriend down from the stands and kisses him on ice, and like that's his coming out, you know.
Aw.
So, and it's really sweet. So I'm like, yeah, you can watch this part.
Susannah, what's bringing you joy and or hope?
Well, this is the first week of the semester, a lot of places and other things. And the fact that all my students stayed for class, even 5 minutes late, and were kind of excited to learn. That's kind of hopeful. I'm with Grace, though, the early morning reading of the Times or looking at the world or some of the things that much of our leadership here in the States is like causes me a lot of anxiety. Um, and also making calls and recording and templates and other things like that. But I am hopeful about like the way we can use children's books to help people affirm all kinds of identities. And I am hopeful. I'm sitting in a room that I kind of took over during COVID because it was an empty office, and it's piles and piles of books you can imagine. And I brought my a new class, students who don't know me in it last night, and their eyes just popped like for looking at things. So I am hopeful and other things. And I have to say, my social media feed, my obsession right now is visible and invisible mending. I want to fix everything for everyone. And so I want to like sew the holes in your sweaters. And I've like made up these cool new cashmere like patches. And I'm trying to learn how to reweave sweaters.
Wow,
And
I've seen videos of that. It seems hard.
yeah, I just like literally like like basically, there's a person in the industry I think that we all know and love, Sophie Blackall, who just can take like anything and turn it into a different piece of clothing. And I want to do that, not in the way that she has an artistic talent, but I'm like literally taking vintage slips and turning them into skirts and all kinds of things. But that the creating, I think that's the thing that so many of us need to feed our souls when we're have some level or a lot of agita about what's going on in the world.
Yeah. Well, for me, I guess on a related note, what's giving me hope is I guess it's the people of Minnesota who are just they're
Those
standing up
Vikings.
for what's right.
Yeah,
They're being brave. They're being smart. They're really organized.
they really are
I'm
awe-inspiring.
just really impressed. And I think, Stephen went to school in Minnesota and he's like, yeah, the people there are they're just strong. And I listened to a podcast and they said one of the reasons why is because the weather is so terrible. So they have to be strong and hardy.
Would you know
Um,
what a good place to donate to that? I went.
Yeah.
Do you know a good place? I went to the
someone just
immigration.
posted and I did donate. It's okay. What is it? It was for a mutual aid organization in Minnesota that I should try to share. And that I think I've lost but there was an author who was organizing it. Let me see if I can find it. I'll look later and then
Oh
I'll
yeah,
even share it.
I'd
Yeah.
be super interested in that. I'm
Yeah.
like putting together books to send to
Hmm.
schools and other things like
Yeah.
that. Like just
Yeah.
fun
I
books.
think also what's giving me hope is I mean, there's such great folk music that's coming out in these days. One of them is there's a trans activist named Sasha Allen, and I'm actually publishing his debut picture book next year. And he is also a singer. Like I actually first came across him because he was on The Voice, but he just wrote this beautiful song that I just really loved. And then Pedro Pascal actually reposted, and I got really excited. I was like, wow. And I don't know if it has a name, but it starts with "Is this what terrorism looks like?" And it goes into. I mean, it's really powerful and really beautifully written. And then the thing that's bringing me joy is so on Tuesday. I was supposed to have a lunch with someone, and he ended up canceling or rescheduling. And I thought, you know what? I try to do this. Our office is right near the MoMA, and I have a membership. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to pop in. And I'd heard that the Ruth Asawa exhibit was really good, and it is ending in February. I think February 4th or 7th. So I'm like, oh, I'll go see it, and it's so good. And so if you're, in New York or nearby, just go check it out. Because I didn't actually know much about her. But she's Japanese American. She was actually interned in the Japanese internment camps. And she does these beautiful woven sculptures, but also wonderful pen and ink drawings and paintings and prints. Just so talented, so great. So that brings me joy.
I love it. I want everybody to go to museums more. That,
Yeah,
Yeah.
Grace just had an amazing exhibit that just closed
yeah,
at the Eric Carle Museum, and um, you and I were in New York, so I didn't get to go to the opening for the new photography exhibit, like photography and children's books, which
Yeah.
I think is in your gallery, right? Is it in your gallery?
Yes.
In the
Yeah,
same
the big
gallery?
one.
In the big
Yes.
gallery? But
At the Carl, yeah.
yeah, just like people like do things that give you pleasure. It's sort of like that airplane statement, put your mask on before helping others. So feed yourself, but then use that energy you have from feeding yourself to do something to help others.
yes. All right. And so now we'll end as we always do with what we're grateful for, which I guess what brings us hope and joy is maybe also what we're grateful
Yeah,
for.
I was gonna say maybe that was like redundant.
But I guess I have another grateful this week. And so I can start first and I've said this before, but I'm grateful for the SCBWI community because it's such a large, such a collaborative, warm, supportive community. So it's always nice to see everyone at that cocktail party and at the conference. That's what I'm grateful for. Grace, do you have another grateful, or are you going to stick with what you're
Oh
hopeful
gosh,
for?
I guess I would say I'm grateful for my house because we're like nice and warm and like at this weekend, last past weekend it was really, really cold and it was like just so nice to like sit next to the fire. And then this upcoming weekend looks like it's gonna be a big blizzard. So it's so nice to
Yeah,
feel like, oh, it'll be like a nice
you'll be
cozy.
cozy.
So
Susanna, what are you grateful for?
I'm really grateful for like the whole children's book community in
Yeah.
general, like the Society of Illustrators and like being able to participate and just like learn and listen to people and see and SCBWI and the fact that like when you're with those people, you just feel energized and uh I curb that I should learn to be an artist really quickly because I know I don't have any of that talent, but I am really grateful for the people who make and are so incredibly dedicated at every level
Yeah.
to high quality books for young people. And I'm just, you know, they say that if it's books, it's not hoarding. I'm not sure that's totally true, but I definitely feel that those are the energizing moments where I hear somebody talk about a book or a publisher highlighting something they're looking forward to.
Yeah,
And
that's
and I'm
wonderful.
grateful for both of you and
Yes, and we're grateful for you.
all the many ways you contribute to creating a happy, healthy, literate, and beautiful world because the things that you both produce in different ways and sometimes together are terrific. Grace, isn't there like a new early reader? I'm kind of
Yes.
excited.
Oh, yes. I guess I should have said something.
Well, you've said it.
Yes. Okay. Yes. I have a new early reader, the Ling and Ting Lunar New Year book. So
Yeah.
yes, that's coming out.
That's
That
kind of
came
exciting.
out.
It
Yes.
came out. All right.
Oh, cool.
And that was the award committees with Susannah Richards episode. Thank you for listening. And thanks to Alex at Paceyworks Studio for editing this podcast. Please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and tell a friend about it.
And tag us on social media using the hashtag BookFriendsForever or send us a message via Instagram at BookFriendsForever_podcast or via our website, BookFriendsForever.com. And please join our Patreon. We're going to do something with it this year. The link is in our show notes.
I'm Alvina Ling, and you can find me at Planet Alvina on TikTok and at Alvina Ling on Instagram, Blue Sky, and Threads. And Susanna, do you want to share again where people can find you?
So I'm Susannah Richards. I need to be pushed to push my social media presence, but I'm generally sussing out books on Instagram. I think that's what I am on Blue Sky. And I am trying to push things out. I'm going to do a bunch more podcasts this year, including I'm going to be on the Children's Book Council podcast with Carl Leonard.
Oh, great.
Next month, which is super, super fun.
Awesome.
And I'm just, once again, thank you for all the things you guys do. And I just there's so much value in the podcasts that you've done for parents, for teachers, for student teachers, for anybody who's interested in learning about the industry and wants to create and possibly be published someday.
Yay.
Aww. Well, I'm Grace Lin, and you can find me at Pacey Lin on Instagram and Threads, and author Grace Lin on Facebook, and Grace Lin author on TikTok, sort of.
Have a great week.
And don't forget to read. Bye.